contains about 20,000 or so neurons, which are firing away as we speak. So each one's an individual network, and they'll fire spontaneously. We take living rat neurons, and they will rapidly form a neural network. And we have this grid of electrodes underneath the surface of these living neurons, and we can listen to the conversation among the neurons. And we can also stimulate activity within that network. We can send in different patterns of stimulation and look at how the network changes as a result of those stimulations. And that's how we do what we do.
What he does is to teach his brain dishes how to control an airplane.
The network can essentially fly the aircraft in a pretty optimal way. So it won't overcorrect too much, and it'll be able to stabilize it in a wide variety of conditions. I think I've programmed like a 50-knot crosswind into this one. It was what it looks like. And you can see it, the aircraft, when it hits one of these crosswinds, how it begins to oscillate. The oldest dish that I've had is at 2 years. And the only reason why that dish died was because we were moving the lab from Caltech to Georgia Tech. Otherwise, that dish would probably still be alive today. Each dish has a characteristic, so you can learn to recognize one dish from another dish. They're demanding, though. You have to feed them once a week. And
more and more, we will be able to measure and understand how our brain cells function. Deciphering our consciousness is another question, but the experiments of Dr. Yang Dan have proved that in principle, it is possible to read and to understand the brain.
I didn't know that we started this thing again. So this is a digitized movie. We present this to the animal, and we record the activity of their visual neurons, and these electrical signals that we recorded from will travel through these cables.
She managed to tap the vision from the brain of a cat and to reconstruct what the cat sees onto a computer screen.
So this is a digitized movie. This particular movie is a short clip from Indiana Jones, I think.
Here we see the two images next to each other. On the left, the image that was shown to the cat. At the right, the image that is tapped out of the cat's brain.
The picture has a lot of random flickering, the noise. That's probably the noise of the actual neurons, because they sometimes fire spontaneous spikes. We consider those noise, but maybe they reflect something else, maybe the thoughts or something. But we can't distinguish that. So when we use all of those, thinking that they represent visual information, this is the reconstruction that we come up with.
It is the first time an image was tapped from a brain. It proves that we can read and understand the grammar of it. The face is recognizable, but I still can't avoid the impression that the face has something cat-like. Dr. Theodore Berger is head of the Center for Neuroengineering at the University of Southern California. With a team of top scientists from different disciplines such as neurology and computer programming, they have collaborated to develop a chip that can replace parts of the brain, or, on a longer time frame, add more brain power.
One of the first things that we do in this process is to actually study this part of the brain experimentally. We need to know very precisely how it behaves if we're going to reproduce that function in a computer chip and put it back into the brain. So what we do is to take the brains out of the animals that we use for these experiments and then slice up this brain tissue and keep the slices alive in a dish. And we studied the electrical properties of these neurons. Neurons happen to use electrical impulses to communicate with each other the same way that transistors do in a circuit. And so essentially what we do is to test the cells to find out, when we give them computer-generated signals of all possible signals, we give them random signals and we ask, how do they behave? And by looking at the translation, we figure out what the function is, and we can describe that function with a set of mathematical equations.
This portion is simulate one neuron.
My colleagues have taken that mathematical model and built a microchip circuit, very small, millimeter by a millimeter. So we can take a part of the hippocampus that's a circuit, we can cut out parts of it, throw it away, and we replace it with a microchip. And so now the whole circuit works just like the biological circuit, so that incoming information looks like, incoming temporal patterns look like outgoing temporal patterns, just like it does for the biological piece of tissue. but now there's a microchip in there instead of having biology in there.
The chip is presently being tested on animals. One problem that remains is how to connect the chip to the brain. Today's technology uses tiny electrodes, but in the future, another option might be to put some brain cells directly onto the connection points of the chip. They would then be guided to form connections at exact points within the brain in order to establish the perfect interface.
Ça pourra permettre de réparer des cerveaux endommagés à la suite d'accidents, de blessures, n'importe quoi, de maladies. Mais d'un autre côté, ça permettra aussi de faire une communication peut-être directe de cerveau à cerveau. Des choses qui sont effectivement pour l'instant limitées, la communication intra-humaine étant limitée avec la parole, alors que là, l'idée qu'on peut directement peut-être communiquer des expériences globales de cerveau à cerveau, c'est quand même quelque chose de fabuleux qu'on peut rêver. Et puis bon, il y a des tas d'autres applications peut-être plus pratiques à court terme.
One such concrete application has already been realized. The chip is used to recognize sounds since it can literally do that with the same accuracy as we do.
So we've used these brain-based models as to develop acoustic recognizers. So we train them in the same way that your brain learns to recognize a particular sound. And one of the first sounds that we've developed is one for gunshot recognition. It's a model of how hippocampal neurons communicate with one another. That's all it is, biology.
You got one over there across the park, then they have another one they used to have right there. Then they just put up another one over here 2 days ago. These high-tech cameras, they are called Crime Stoppers. If a gunshot goes off to my left or to my right, the camera automatically traces down the sound of the gunfire and zooms in and takes pictures.
You cannot buy a system today that can recognize speech signals or any other signal in noisy environments. They don't work. But your brain works that way, and because our model is based on the brain, our models work in noisy environments.
And the thing is, there are no cameras installed in the white neighborhood, but we have 5, 6 cameras in the black neighborhood. So the black neighborhood is being watched.
If an airline pilot is about to press the wrong button, it may be important enough to think about trying to identify what the patterns of thought are, what the memory patterns are, and if the person is recalling pressing the button so that we eject right, when they're not supposed to, or press the button so that a bomb goes off and they're not supposed to, then you might want to intervene and prevent that. I'm part of another project that is funded by DARPA that's trying to understand exactly that. I mean, how is information represented in the brain?
And science is supposed to have all the answers. But this has got to work.
It's not going to fail, not after we've come this far. We have here, for all practical purposes, a normal human being, except for his electronic sensory control system, of course.
On devrait, avec des localisations donc de ces circuits électroniques dans différents endroits du cerveau, de pouvoir lire le contenu du cerveau et le mettre sur un disque dur, le transmettre directement sur à une autre personne, etc., etc.
Part of our problem is in getting enough sensors into the brain without destroying it. Getting enough sensors in there so that we can extract enough information to infer what the total pattern of activity is. And if we can do that, then we have to develop a mathematical model of how information along all those pathways develops and is processed. And so for the next few years, that's going to be the task. Now, if we can do that, then we'll get to the finish line. We will get to the finish line.
It's a conservative statement to say that by 2025 We'd be able to look inside your brain, see everything that's going on, all the interneuronal connections, all the synaptic clefts, all the neurotransmitter strengths, and create a huge database and copy down every salient detail, and then reinstantiate that information in a neural computer of sufficient capacity and create basically a copy of the thinking process that takes place in your brain. Now that's one scenario, but it's really an existence proof to show that we can tap the secrets of intelligence that exist in, let's say, the human brain. Once we've scanned that information, we can also understand it, see how it's organized, improve on it. We can extend it. We can make the memory 1,000 times bigger. We can make it faster. We can expand the perceptual capabilities.
To transfer your mind to a computer, this seems to be the ultimate dream of many scientists. To liberate us from our old body that is becoming obsolete in this technological world. We would then go on living as free spirits in cyberspace.
I'm not interested in a future where there are post-human beings if I'm not one of them. I want to be there. It's very important to me that I live and thrive in the future, not just to think about some robots taking off into space. I want to be there.
So in a way, mind uploading is a shortcut around artificial intelligence that will allow us to have machines with human minds.
I'm hoping that we could fit on a CD-ROM. That's 600 megabytes. And I'll bet that that's all you need to copy a person.
So it's a difficult time to predict what these new humans will be like. I think it's important to include the third component, which is the virtual, along with the artificial and along with the flesh. But how that mixture goes together in a cooperative versus a competitive way is hard to predict. It's very interesting. It's a great time to live in. But I'm anxious to wait 50 years to see what the answer is.
Reality and virtual reality are beginning to merge. To understand how this will occur, we have to look at one more technology slated to overshadow all other branches of technology. It's nanotechnology, the means of getting control over matter, atom by atom.
So what we're going to do is move this atom from this location here to a location right over here. We'll move it just along this path here. Now you got to get excited about that. You just got to get excited about that.
Scientists are now able to grab one single atom and move it to another place. It's a small step for an atom, but a giant leap for mankind. If we start making things by building them atom by atom, we can make almost anything we want.
Manufactured products are made from atoms, and the properties of those products depend on how the atoms are arranged. Now, today's manufacturing technologies arrange atoms very crudely and statistically, but in the future, with nanotechnology, we'll be able to arrange the fundamental building blocks of matter in precisely the patterns we want, very flexibly and very inexpensively.
Nanotechnology will open vast opportunities for all other technologies, in particular for computing. When computer connections can be made by single atoms, computer power will increase enormously.
Computers incredibly powerful that just would let us put into a single sugar cube a computer that was more powerful than all the computers in the world combined today.
But there are many other fields in which nanotechnology will be applied. While at the end of the last millennium, most scientists believed that nanotechnology would remain science fiction, we now see its first applications already appearing on the market.